if you're a collector of sports cards, there is no advice that is better than collect the card, not the grade. It's just not even close. So that is something to always be thinking about. But the question I have is, why can't we do it? What is the reason that we have so much trouble not caring about the grade? I have a theory. My theory is that it goes all the way back to kindergarten, all the way back to when we were going to school and everything was about the grade. What we cared about, how we were being evaluated, was about the grade. And it's almost like we now have PTSD about it. If we would get a C plus, we would be disappointed. But if we got a B minus, which might be a percent or two better, we maybe weren't disappointed. If we got an A minus, we would be happy that we got an A. But if we got a B plus, a lot of the times we were disappointed. So I think that we worry too much about that third party's evaluation of something. If you worked really hard preparing for a test in high school, in college, in grade school, and you got a C plus instead of a B minus, if you got a 78% instead of an 81%, there's really not much difference in your grade. But psychologically, there's a big difference. There are some really, really nice graded cards that have a 5 or a 6 attached to them. I'm going to show you some of mine from my personal collection right now that I just think are severely undergraded. And we're going to look at it, and then I'm going to say, why are we caring so much what PSA or SGC are saying, or BGS, or whoever you use? Why do we care how much they're saying? Now, if we're an investor, totally different story, because there are a lot of people who have an ego thing about the grades that they have of different cards. If we're a collector, I really think we need to stop caring so much. Let's take a look at some of my cards. Let's take a look at the grades that they received versus how nice the card actually is. I am a collector. Almost everything that I buy is going to go into my collection. If that's the case, I really need to do my best to remove the PTSD of school from my mind and focus specifically on the card. We have to overcome that psychological hangup that the number that is assigned actually matters. The harder grading that's going on by several of the companies should be telling us that we're getting really nice cards at lower grades for less money, which is good. So if you're a collector and you can overcome the mental obstacle of what the grade says on the card and actually just focus on the card itself, you're going to have a better collection, and it's going to be for less money. Use this to your advantage. Check this out and tell me what you think.
All right, so here are some cards from my personal collection. Now, this is a 1956 Ted Williams. Brilliant color, really well centered. You can even see the top and the bottom edge have a little bit of a rough cut, which I genuinely like because it shows me the card was not altered or messed with, and it looks fresh. We look at the back of the card. Nothing wrong with this card. There are no creases. There are no wrinkles. And it's a 3.5. Look at the picture and the clarity and the color of this card. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But it's far better than a 3.5. I mean, look at the card. It's such a nice card. For a 3.5, to me, it's at least a 5. At least. Speaking of 5s, This is my 71 Wilt Chamberlain. Now, this actually looks more off center because of how it's sitting in the case. And it's kind of sitting up against the edge there. But the corners are razor sharp. The centering of it is really about 60-40 if you're looking at it in person. Maybe 65-35. But the corners are like ideal. Now, the back of it has a little bit worse centering, but it's still pretty decently centered. The color is perfect. The color absolutely pops. And it's like, how does this card, again, the angle and the shadow there make the right border look like less than it is? I'm telling you, it's about 60-40. How's it a 5? Here's a Jerry Rice rookie. I genuinely don't see a single flaw on this card. In my honest opinion, I don't know how it's not a 10. It's perfectly centered. There's not a single white mark on the border or corners. And it's an 8. I mean, it's at least a 9. You might say that the top to bottom centering on the back, but I mean, the thing is flawless. It is beautiful on a brutal set with a brutal border, and it gets an 8. This is awesome because I paid 8 prices. Speaking of 8s, this is probably my Grail football card, the Joe Montana rookie. I got this in an 8 as well. I don't see a single flaw on the card. The corners are absolutely perfect. The side-to-side centering is absolutely perfect. It is a gorgeous card. Now, the back centering might be off a little, so okay, maybe it's a 9. But I mean, look at this thing. The color is perfect. The image is perfect. The side-to-side centering is perfect. Top to bottom might be off a pinch.
I know that it's difficult to ignore a third party's grade. I totally get it. Just like if we thought we did really well on that English essay and we get a C plus instead of a B minus, or a B plus instead of an A minus, it doesn't change the quality of the paper. It doesn't change the quality of the work because one person decided that it was at one level, but you feel it's at a different. So, as difficult as it can be, we have to only use the grade as a little bit of an indicator. It's one indicator. It is not the only indicator. The 4 cards that I just showed from my personal collection, I think are severely undergraded. The Rice and the Montana, I have no doubt in my mind, deserve at least a 9. That Wilt Chamberlain, I believe the Wilt Chamberlain deserves a 7. Maybe, probably a 7 is probably the grade that I think that it deserves. You know, the Ted Williams, it's not a perfect card, but it's at least a 5. So here's the thing. I got to buy a Montana and Rice rookie, 2 of my Grail football cards, for the price of an 8. But the quality of the card is at least a 9. I got to buy a really, really nice Wilt Chamberlain for the cost of a 5. And I usually only buy these cards when I feel like they're a little under cost. I get a good deal on them. So I got it for the low cost of a 5. And to me, it's probably a 7. Only because of the centering. It looks exactly like it does the day it came out of the pack. If we look at that Ted Williams, again, it's not a perfect card, but I paid 3.5 prices. In fact, that card was featured in a card show video that I recently went to, and you saw the whole process of the whole negotiation and everything. And I paid really like 3 price for it. And to me, it's at least a 5. So buy the card, not the grade. And when a card is undergraded, you're getting it for less than it should be worth. So instead of looking at it as, oh yeah, it's just a 3.5, go, no, it's a 5, but I paid 3.5 prices. Cards getting graded harder is a great thing for collectors that aren't planning on selling. You get sweet cards for cheaper prices.
All right. Tell me what you think about that. I really believe that if you're buying the card and ignoring the grade, you're going to get better cards for cheaper prices. And that is good for us.